What will the history books say about today that Sweden decided to end its long-held neutrality and finally talk about joining NATO? That the President of the United States called the Russian invasion of Ukraine an act of genocide, perhaps? Well, the pages of history will not recall the intervention of one Nigel Mills, the Tory member for Amber Valley, who became the first Conservative MP to call on Boris Johnson to resign over what we are calling, of course, Partygate. What must foreign nations make of Britain right now, days after our Prime Minister emerged as a standard bearer, in the eyes of some, for the West, walking heroically alongside Volodymyr Zelensky in Kiev? He faces calls to resign here at home. Joining me, Brendan O'Neill, the chief political writer for Spiked Online. Brendan, welcome to you. Very good afternoon to you. I think we know how some foreign nationals will respond to this, with incredulity, incomprehension. There'll be others, though, maybe in this country, who'll say, we set a fantastic example for democracy. Which is it?
I think we need to get this into perspective. I am now officially bored of Partygate. I think it's taking up too much time, too much energy. We're focusing on it far too much to the exclusion of issues that are much more important. And we need to get it into perspective. You know, Boris Johnson allegedly went to a party for a few minutes. He sang happy birthday, or people sang happy birthday to him. They had some cake. They might have had a glass of wine in the Downing Street garden. This is not the Profumo affair. This is not Watergate. We're not talking about some mafioso-style criminality. And we really do need to get it in perspective and recognise that there are far more important issues in the world than this.
If that recognition is necessary, Brendan, who needs to do the recognising? Is it journalists who send to scalp? Is it politicians who want him gone, perhaps replaced by somebody more in keeping with their inclinations? Who's setting the running on this?
I think the media are doing a lot of the running on this, and they've been gunning for Boris for quite a long time. I think the Remainer elites in general are really stirring up Partygate, because this is a politicised scandal now. It is being used not just to punish Boris and Rishi for breaking the rules, which they did, and that's a bad thing to have done, but also to punish Boris for being pro-Brexit, for simply being Boris Johnson, for being a Conservative in Downing Street, and for being a Conservative in Downing Street who got Brexit done. That's why some people are pushing this as hard as they can. You know, Lord Adonis made it pretty clear when he said, if Boris goes, Brexit goes. So there is a political agenda behind Partygate. And I don't like the way in which this scandal is being whipped up, almost to undermine the democratic process. 14 million people voted Boris Johnson into power. That ought to count for something, even in the face of these fixed penalty notices.
And as you say, Brendan, there is an opportunity cost, as the economists call it. If you are talking about this, there's the other basket of stuff you're not talking about. What should we be talking about right now instead of Partygate?
There is so much. I mean, firstly, there's Ukraine, the crisis in Ukraine, and Boris has done a pretty good job of supporting the Ukrainian resistance, which I think is essential that Britain does that. There's the cost of living crisis. There's the fuel crisis. There's the fact that people are not sure how to make ends meet at the moment. There are all sorts of crises swirling around post-lockdown as a result of the fuel problem, as a result of war in Europe. We have been cursed to live in interesting times, and we should be taking ourselves more seriously than this. And that raises the question for me, why is Partygate being focused on so much when there are other important issues going on? And I think it is because people want to drive the knife into Boris's back and get him out of power. They want to do what they failed to do at the ballot box, which is to ensure that Boris Johnson doesn't run this country.
I'll come back to where I started, Brendan. I think it's sometimes a useful thought exercise to try and take yourself off our small island and place yourself in another part of the world and look from afar at how it looks. The last time you saw Boris Johnson was on the streets of Kiev. He was flanked by Volodymyr Zelensky at some personal risk, walking the streets of a war-torn and embattled city, very much seen as somebody who was leading the charge when it came to Ukraine and speaking up for a particular position in a very eloquent and strong way. That's the last time you saw for Boris Johnson. That's your current vision of him. And then you look at these, in quotes, charges against him for fixed penalty notices, and you're left shaking your head in bewilderment and bafflement.
Absolutely. And people looking at Britain from outside will definitely think that. They will think, hold on, weren't we all celebrating, or some of us were celebrating, Boris Johnson going to Kyiv to show solidarity with the Ukrainian people? And now we're talking about the fact that he spent 5 or 10 minutes in the cabinet room having a birthday cake. I mean, it is completely surreal. I thought there was a lot of sneering and cynicism about Boris's visit to Ukraine, which I thought was completely unwarranted. It was a good thing to do. It was right to show the solidarity of the British people with the Ukrainian people. And these are the kinds of things we should be talking about. But there is this bit of a witch hunt now brewing around Boris Johnson. And my basic point is I'm now more concerned about the response to Partygate than I am by Partygate itself, because the response looks increasingly small-minded, anti-democratic and vengeful. And we should be concerned about that.
Brendan, as ever, thanks very much indeed. Brendan O'Neill there